Hey, this is Chris. Now, investing overseas is becoming more and more popular for Australians, particularly as it's getting easier and easier to invest in other markets via low-cost ETFs, giving you global exposure. A question we're getting a lot from clients is, why would I even bother investing in Australia at all? We've had 10 years of bad performance in Australia. Shares don't seem to be going up very fast. You've got old school sectors like financials and miners here, whereas in other markets it's a lot more sexy with healthcare and tech. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why I think Australian shares still belong in your portfolio. And the first reason is exactly the reason that people bring up for not owning Australian shares, which is that they haven't gone well for 10 years. When it comes to investing, you actually do want to own the things that have underperformed for a period. Markets tend to be like a concertina, and if they squeeze in and don't have performance for quite a while, they tend to have great performance for a period after that. And so I'd be looking for probably a great performance over the next 10 years in Australia, simply because investment performance hasn't been great over the last 10 years, and people have been looking in other markets. And so it's not a very crowded market and not a very popular one for local or overseas investors at the moment. And that lack of popularity will eventually turn into popularity, and that's when we'll see share prices do well again. The second reason is the long-term performance is really fantastic for Australian shares. Over periods of 20 or 30 or 50 years, the Australian market has returned something like 8 to 10% per year. And it's been a lot less volatile than investing in global shares because you don't have the currency risk that you have investing overseas. Plus, you've got the extra benefit in Australia of our franking credit system, which tends to boost performance for most people as well. So even though they haven't done well recently, they've got a great long-term track record of performance, and really they're better returning than almost any other asset class, especially share market asset classes over the long run. And the last reason I would say that you still want to have Australian shares in your portfolio is that there really aren't too many other choices these days for good returning assets. When it comes to other defensive assets like cash or bonds, returns these days are almost zero. And so getting any sort of dividend from Australian shares is a good result compared to other asset classes, and it's likely to drive continued interest in this as an asset class as people are squeezed out of assets like cash and bonds that no longer give you any sort of return at all. So there are three reasons why I think Australian shares still belong in your portfolio and are likely to have a good 10 years going forward. And it's also why the stock swap portfolios continue to have a good proportion in all of them in Australian shares.